Holes in jeans are really common, and sometimes they add to the appeal of the jeans, and sometimes they create functional problems, like losing things out of your pockets. I'm Alyssa, a slow fashion designer, sewing instructor, and former seamstress, so I have spent a lot of time repairing holes in jeans, my own and other people's. And so in this video, I'm gonna repair this pocket here, and like a whole bunch of ways that you might not have thought of so that you can get a repair that suits your vibe. So let's dive into it. A new thing to do these days is like splicing jeans and mixing and matching different colors of denim. So I've pulled out a couple of pockets and looking for like shape and fit and color. So this one is actually almost identical in size to the other pocket. So that's an idea. Then I've got this other one, which is a little bigger, a totally different color, but that could go over it. Another thing you could do is you could kind of have it be a little bit down, kind of like a double pocket, but it still fixes the repair, because if you put something in this pocket and this is sewed below, nothing can fall out of the hole. So it still effectively fixes the problem, but in a more creative way. You could use like some striped fabric, what might be cool. And which way would you put the stripes? You want to use a fabric that's durable, because this is a pocket, a back pocket. You're going to be sitting on it. It's going to take a lot of wear and tear. So you might use something fun like an upholstery fabric. So this is like kind of a double-sided. You could make some crazy pockets. If you were going to do like a little more subtle repair, you could put a color in there. I would peel all that back, flip it over, sew a piece on behind it, sew it back down. You could use a contrasting thread. You could like sashiko style hand stitching on there. That would be really neat, which you could do kind of just, you could add your patch behind and then do this hand stitching and then sew your pocket back down. That's really cool. Either doing a color or doing the same color as the jeans can be cool. Like if you use black thread and did a whole bunch of stitches in black thread. Another idea is something like this. So this is layers of denim. This is 1-inch strips of denim. So you can see if I go really up close, it's a 1-inch strip, and I've just sewed down the middle. And so what I did is I drew the lines on the fabric so that I would try to get them straight. And I cut them. You want to, if you do this kind of thing, you want to look at the grain of the fabric that you're using for these strips. It's a little bit time consuming because you've got to sew all the strips on, so you're kind of making your fabric a little bit. But you want to cut the strips in a way so that you're not got a lot of unravelly bits. Here's an example. You can see the unravelly bits. This was a little purse that I made a while back. I don't like the way this one came out because this was with stretch denim. So this was with denim that's got some spandex in it. So it doesn't, I feel like it doesn't get that nice sort of denim patina the way that 100% cotton denim would. So if you want to do the strip method, you might look for 100% cotton denim, or you could use linen or just some natural fiber that doesn't have the stretch in it, because the stretch tends to do this curly bit. But also you want to play with the grain of the strips so that you don't have your strings all unraveling on you. This pocket is a little smaller, so that could be an idea too. You could do like a smaller pocket on top of it instead of what I was doing before with a bigger pocket. Like you could have a smaller double pocket. But you want to watch out for rivets, because rivets are really hard to get off. Sometimes you've got to use like metal snippers and things, and there's a hole in the fabric there. If you do succeed in getting that rivet off, you will have that like, yay, I did it. And then, oh, but now there's a big hole in the fabric, which can be sewed over and mended, but it's just better to look for ones. There's enough out there that don't have rivets. Jeans designers really think about what's the shape of the pocket, what's the size of the pocket, where does it sit on the jeans? So how does it look on your bum? Like, does it make your bum look good? And what shape and size makes your bum look good? So that's something to consider when you are doing your own repairs. Do you care about the way your bum looks, or do you just want the jeans to have a different cool like style, or both? If you find a pocket that you like, pin it on there before you sew it and try it on in the mirror and see what it looks like. A lot of jeans have a detail on here that can be fun. This one is blank, so I think I'm going to create my own detail. I've already removed one of the pockets from this jeans. There are obviously different tools, standard kind of like seam ripper. I really like using curved, these little scissors for removing stitches. But the thing that I use most when I'm working on jeans is a razor blade. Now, I am not saying go get razor blades and use razor blades. Disclaimer, be very, very careful. And if you have children around, make sure you put them away and keep them up high. And maybe don't even have them in the first place. If you have little children around, it's just not worth the risk. But they are really good for removing stitches on jeans, because you can, if you've got a sharp razor blade and you get under there, you can just kind of hear that. You can just kind of slide it right down there. And you really, again, need to be careful when you get up to the bar tacks in the corners. But that is a fairly easy way to remove. Pretty quick. See, I've already got like a good chunk of it off just in a few seconds. So say you want to make your own pocket. Say you want to either maybe remove this one and put a different one on. You can use this as a pattern to make the next pocket. If you don't want to remove this, then you probably want to find one that's pretty identical in shape and size and use that as a pattern. So I've taken the other one from this pair of jeans, and opened them all out. And this is what it looks like all flat, which is really kind of cool to see all the fading and everything. And I've removed most of the stitches. I didn't remove these because these weren't a chain stitch. These were a little trickier to remove. But see how you've got a double fold. This is a double fold to enclose that raw edge. But the rest of it just does this. I mean, it's all just raw edges in there, right? So this is what it looks like before you unfold them. And you got a chain stitch here. If you want to take this out, that's generally pretty easy to take out, and it just pulls right out. I'll do a video on that eventually, but you can just Google or look for a video on how to remove chain stitching, and it does a really nice, satisfying pull out, rather than trying to pick it out stitch by stitch. But this you can use as your pattern. So maybe you did something in another fabric. You could even do you could do some kind of cool little tucks or something. That would be cool. But if you do any kind of a texture, if you create some kind of a texture, or maybe you're doing something like this, you want to create that sort of fabric, that texture, before you cut it out, because it will typically get smaller. You know, if you're making tucks or doing something, it gets smaller. So you want to create that a little bit bigger than the piece that you need. And you can use this as a pattern. And this has got, you can see this has got about 1/2 inch seam allowances around the edge. And then up here for our double fold, we've got about 3/4. Now the thicker it is, if it's thicker material, you might need 1 inch instead of 3/4 of an inch. You might need a little more turn under. This 1/2 inch is pretty generous. This is pretty good. But one thing to note, if you're using this as a pattern, for example, there's a couple ways you can do this. You can just put this right on the fabric and use that as your pattern, or you can trace around it and then cut that out as a paper pattern. But you might, I don't know if you can see, but you might notice how this is just, it's a little bit torqued in that direction. It's not quite symmetrical. And that's because these jeans were worn. And that's what happens. Like if you try to make a pattern out of something that's been worn, a lot of times it's a little bit skewed. I mean, even if I try to kind of line them up, there's definitely a little bit extra up there. So you could cut that off, but maybe the better thing to do would be trace it, and then kind of what they call true up your paper pattern, because your pockets are typically going to be the same. They're going to be symmetrical on the fold, like left to right, they're going to be the same. Not always. I mean, you could have it different. Heck, you could even do a heart shape or a circular pocket. I mean, there's so many ideas. And then thinking about what's the design on the middle? What would you do there? There is a really cool denim designer in Brooklyn, New York, who does a little denim design of the Brooklyn Bridge. I'll put a link to his shop in the video notes. And he also does this really cool fade thing where he hides a little fold in behind. He actually sews a little fold in that you can't see when you first buy the jeans, but then as they get worn, the fold becomes like one of these faded lines, which becomes the road of the bridge. Super cool. There's lots of little interesting techniques that you could do like that. It's worth a look for sure. And I kind of also like this idea of doing this sort of double pocket thing. I think that's kind of cute. But I don't want it to come down this far. So I'm thinking tucks, maybe some cute little tucks sewn in here. Like that, and see what that looks like. I want to test that out. So I'm going to use my heat erasable pen to just kind of plan this out. So I don't want any tucks below, say here, and I don't want any tucks above, say here. So I've got I got 4 inches to work with, and I want to do 5 tucks inside those 4 inches. I'm just kind of eyeballing this. You want to get it as straight as possible, but I'm gonna kind of eyeball it. So that's 4 inches. Yeah, that's gonna be my smallest tuck there. So we want 3/8 of an inch. I think I can do a tuck that's that size. Yeah, that'll be like a little tiny tuck. I think that's about how small I can. This is pretty thick fabric, so that's about how small I can do. So that's gonna be 3/8. And then this is gonna be 3/8. So there's a tuck. And this does not have to be perfect. This is creation, this is not perfection. So then we got our 5 tucks. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And then, so what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna make those lines go all the way across. Straighten them out a little bit. And if you mess up, just use the iron and erase it and start over. Now, heat erasable pens can leave a little bit of a ghost image sometimes, but when you're doing creative repairs on jeans, you don't have to worry about the perfection so much. It's not like you're working on a white silk blouse or anything. So don't worry if it leaves a slight image. That's all just, it's all. So it looks like I've just got a whole bunch of lines, but I actually have 5 lines there. So let's go over to the sewing machine. If I stick a pin through here, it should come out. Ooh, look at that, how perfect. It should come out on the other side. And then what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna sew a straight line across. So always hold on to your thread tails for the first couple stitches so they don't get sucked up into your machine. So annoying. All right, and we're gonna back stitch a little bit just to keep that together. And then I'm gonna go all the way down and just kind of pinch that all the way down, try to keep that nice and even. I'm gonna move this little bit out of the way. We'll push that back together later. Now I don't want that pin in there, I don't need that. So just wanna make sure that that looks even as possible all the way down. And then I am sewing, I'm putting that line to come right into my needle. So I always wanna pick a spot either on the needle, it's usually somewhere on the presser foot or a line off to the side, or you can use a piece of tape. Like this Post-it tape is great for making a line for yourself. And just put that down in the machine. It doesn't leave any residue, so it's great for that. Comes in different colors. In this case, I'm looking at the needle, which is rare because I want that line to go right into the needle. Dial in a little bit. Okay. I'm back stitching. And then this is called a sewing pig, this little guy, and this makes it so that you don't have to pick as long. It's faster if you're sewing off the edge. And yes, you can sew off the edge. For years I thought you couldn't, but you can actually sew off the edge on most machines. Some machines it might snarl, but. So see, we've got a little tuck going on there, which is kind of cute. And then probably what I'll do is I'll sew those down when I've got them all done. That's kind of a cute little guy. And we'll iron it, we'll give it a good press. Or maybe I'll sew them up. Oh, I might sew them up, because if I sew them down, that kind of looks weird in the, I don't like that, looks weird in the corner, so I may sew them up. Although you have to think about how is it gonna feel to sit on it, you know? If you're making texture, how's it gonna feel to sit on it? How's it gonna feel if you put your hands on your bum? How's that gonna feel? So I'm gonna do a few more of those. The other thing I do sometimes, instead of doing these 2 lines, that can be easier actually, is you just do 1 line in the middle, and then that you would fold it on the line, and that can actually be an easier way to do tucks. And then you're just gonna do, in that case, you wouldn't be feeding it right into the needle, you'd be like doing another spot here on the presser foot or something. And so you can sew right from your sewing pig, right onto your fabric. Back stitching to keep that from coming apart. And again, I didn't put a pin in this time because it does not need to be perfect. So now we've got 2 little tucks. So I'm gonna finish up the other ones and I will meet you back here. And another thing I wanted to mention is that you probably want to use a jeans needle or a top stitching needle for this. It's usually like a 90-10 or above. So maybe 100, there's like a, I forget what the other number is, but like the heavier the denim, the heavier the needle, because your needle is less likely to break if it's heavy enough, and also you want good stitches going through there. And you might want to use some heavier thread as well, some top stitching thread. And just play around with it. Like if you've got a similar denim scrap, play around with that and see how different thread colors look, how different thicknesses are. You might need to do some just kind of testing to get it looking the way you want it. There, ooh, our pocket got so much shorter. Okay, so our pocket, look how much shorter it is. It got definitely much shorter. But let's give it a press and see what we've got. So I'm pressing them up. You could try pressing them down. You could try sort of smushing them flat, but I'm going with the up direction. And you don't have to sew them up. So that's sort of interesting. And the other thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna remove all of this gold stitching because I want the dark gray stitching on the whole thing. Another idea is if you want to do some hand embroidery or just like hand sewing of it on back on after, you can save the gold thread or whatever thread went with it from the chain stitching, and you can put that in a needle and just use that, and then you'll have an exact match on your thread. You can reuse that. Turns out I did not like the 5 rows of tucks because it made the pocket too like short and stubby, which I didn't like. And I also decided I wanted the tucks to go down instead of up. So I've gone back to 3 rows of tucks, and I took out all of that gold stitching to replace it with the dark gray. And then I went ahead and sewed down this edge first with the dark gray stitching. So that's all nailed down because you don't want to do that. Doing that after would be way harder. So you definitely want to do that before you put the pocket on. So to put the pocket on, what you want to do is you want to turn the pants inside out because you're going to work sort of inside the pants because it's easier to get at it when you're working at it from inside the pants rather than from the outside. So you can see I've got the pants inside out and I have lined the pocket up here. Now you could pin this in place. You could hand baste it in place. You can refer to my video about how to spend less time with your seam ripper, which has some good tips on how to keep things in position. I am going to just give it a go without either of those things and see if I can just hold it in place. Sometimes it's tricky, but I think because of I kind of have this ridge up here that it may stay. And I don't want to do a real secure row of stitches first. I want to do kind of a tentative row of stitches. You want to use some bigger stitches because those are easier to take out if it turns out that you just don't like this. So I have got this in place. I've got my points lined up. I'm going to try to hold on to the points. I'm just going to sew over these tucks. And here we go. I'm not even going to back stitch either because we'll go ahead and go over it again later. Again, I've got a jeans needle in here. This one is a 90-14, but you may even want 100, just depending on your machine and the thickness of the fabric and the thickness of the thread. And I'm using kind of, it's not really a top stitching thread, but it's kind of a heavier thread. And I'm just gonna go around this outer edge. I'm not gonna do both rows of stitching yet. And as you can see, hopefully you can see, let's zoom in a little. You can see where that previous stitching line was because the fabric's not faded there. So I'm stitching right inside, in the middle of that. You could do something different. You could stitch next to it because you like to see the dark line. Like there's just like endless opportunities for creation here, being creative. And I'm just going to that point, pivot. When you pivot, always have your needle down so that you don't get off your position. So needle is down when you pivot. Swing everything around, making sure those tucks are pointing down. The presser foot is going to be working against me. So if you found that that was difficult, you could stop here and then start at the tip up here and go down over them at least the first time. But I'm going to see if I can make it behave. Sometimes just raising the presser foot up over them, like if one flips, just raise the presser foot up and then fix it and put it back. Okay, again, not back stitching. I just want to see how that looks first. And if I don't put the back stitches in, it is easier to take out if I decide I don't like it, because this is all just experimentation, playing around. So here we are with it on. We've got one pocket, we're gonna add the other. And if you're noticing that the color of my shirt has changed, yes. This is actually the next day because I had to go home and think about it, because that's what you have to do with creative projects sometimes. Sometimes you gotta let them percolate a little bit. So yeah, and I've actually got, now kind of, not that I would use them, but I've got two pockets. So kind of cool. And I decided that it was a little bit too light. I wanted it to meld with the existing colors of the jeans a little better. So I removed it, which was easy to do because I hadn't nailed it down too hard. And I'm in looking at the color of these jeans. So these jeans really have like kind of black and blue threads in them. And if you look at some of the fade spots are coming sort of pretty close to the blue in here. So they do go together well, but I wanted to bring more black. It's actually not black, it's a dark gray. And I switched over to a top stitching thread, which is thicker, and went over it twice in some spots. And then I still felt like, still not quite enough, wanting to just sort of meld those two together a little bit. So then I just added these stitches. I just went back and forth. As you can see, they're not perfect. Some of them are narrower, some of them are wider. I was kind of using the width of half of the, the one side of the presser foot as a gauge. And I would go over like 3 stitches, pivot, turn around and come back. And I just did this over the one length. I didn't put anything behind it because the denim's thick enough that you can stitch over it without having anything behind it. And I just kind of feel like that gives it more of an overall, kind of blends it together a little bit better. And I kind of like this little double pocket thing. I think that's sort of interesting. And they feel good on, like, that feels like a serious pocket right there. So I'm gonna do the other one. I have pulled that one off. And I don't know if it'll be exactly the same or if it'll just be corresponding. You could also do these lines with a Sharpie. quite a bit simpler, obviously. You could use a ruler and just like Sharpie those lines if you wanted to add something like that. It will fade more over time. After a few washes, it won't stay, but it can be kind of fun to try out details that way. But I decided to go ahead and stitch it and not add anything else at this point and just see how I like that. And then we'll see how the other pocket comes out. So that is what I have for you today. I showed you how to do add a little creativity to your jeans, whether it's a repair or maybe it's just like a little zhuzhing of your jeans. My goal is to help you build a wardrobe that you love because it feels more like you. If that sounds intriguing and maybe a little bit intimidating still, let's do it together. You go ahead and subscribe. And if you liked this one, these jeans are a little bit long. So the next video, I'm gonna show you how I hem these without actually taking apart the original hem, leaving the original hem intact, but I'm still gonna shorten them. So check out the next video for that. Until next time, keep sewing and creating just because it feels good. Bye.